It's beginning to look a lot like silly season, drivers linked to every team, but the prettiest sight to see will be the reaction from NASCAR Nation when Bob Pockrass or Adam Stern blows up Twitter completely. Sure, it's silly season once more, as NRF Productions proudly presents the Spotter's Guide predicting the 2023 NASCAR Silly season. So I'm sure you guys are tired of hearing this guy's name, Kyle Busch, the driver that has had a career crisis thanks to M&M's looking towards the future and focusing on the more important things in life. By now, you guys know damn well what that is. Because of that, a two-time NASCAR Cup champion, a 60 career NASCAR Cup Series winner, including 18 consecutive winning seasons. In fact, a winless season in the NASCAR Cup Series from Kyle Busch is less likely than spotting Bigfoot. All of that, and this man still could not get the contract he deserves. It would take months of rigorous fighting. He was linked to almost every single team, including Joe Gibbs Racing, 2311, Stewart-Haas, and even Colleague. However, Kyle Busch would finally find the deal that not only suits himself, but his wife Samantha, his race team, Hendrick Motorsports, and of course his son Braxton, who is looking to extend the Busch legacy, much like the Busch legacy that we had in politics all the many years ago. Kyle Busch is going to be racing for the owner that put him in a headlock at Kansas in 2011. That's right, Richard Childress is the man that is going to fund Kyle Busch's career for likely the remainder of his racing days in the NASCAR Cup Series. The car he will be taking over is car number 8, and already there is a high demand to sponsor Kyle Busch in this entry. There is going to be potentially some new sponsors, maybe even some returning sponsors if we're lucky, although knowing modern NASCAR, they're probably not even looking our way, the likes of Target, Miller Lite, and the Home Depot. Still, this is a monumental move for Kyle Busch, as not only is this big in the short term because he will be competitive for many years to come, because Randall Burnett is going to be his crew chief, the guy that won the 2019 Xfinity Championship, but now his son Braxton Busch has a path, has a car, a route to get to the NASCAR Cup Series, likely being in car number 8 whenever Kyle Busch retires 8 to 9 years down the road. It's a move that was set up by Austin Dillon. He was the one that recruited Kyle Busch, and it was a move in response to another move that Richard Childress Racing witnessed, one that they would prefer not to talk about, and that is the fact that Tyler Reddick is leaving Richard Childress Racing to go to 2311 Racing beginning in the 2024 NASCAR Cup Series season. Not 2023, no, there's still 1.5 years left. Tyler Reddick is going to be going after next season. This put RCR in a vulnerable position, and they have a right to be mad at Tyler Reddick because he basically told the team, nothing matters next season, I'm out the door. So Richard Childress chose to respond harshly by giving Tyler Reddick a notice 1 hour early, 1 hour before the announcement that he would not return to the number 8 car. That's still an hour's more notice than Tyler Reddick gave Richard Childress when he decided to leave. And now this puts Tyler Reddick in kind of a vulnerable situation, like what is going to happen? There's talks that Richard Childress Racing is going to add a third charter. However, when you look at history, it is not the wisest idea for Richard Childress Racing to look at expansion, especially since this is a lame duck year and they don't exactly have a driver lined up for that third seat when Tyler Reddick decides indeed to go to 2311 Racing. Which is why I have a theory, and this theory is that Richard Childress Racing is only going to run Tyler Reddick in a part-time capacity. They have potentially read this contract damn well and see that the only requirement potentially is the idea that Tyler Reddick just has to race for Richard Childress Racing. There's no talk he has to be on a charter team, and there's definitely no wording that says that he has to be in a full-time ride. And like I said in the Kyle Busch video, I don't feel bad for Tyler Reddick. He made an action, but obviously consequences are a result of actions. And he made a decision. He blindsided Richard Childress Racing, left for 2311 Racing, and RCR has the absolute right to respond in such a harsh way, even if that means a generational talent is on the sidelines in terms of competing for a NASCAR Cup Series championship. So I know a lot of NASCAR fans won't be happy with that idea, and potentially one of the resolving situations could be the fact that Richard Childress Racing might decide to sell the contract the option for 2023 to 2311 Racing. Now, what car is he going to be in? Obviously, it will not be in car number 23. Denny Hamlin and Michael Jordan decided to lock down Bubba Wallace, and this was a surprising move because Bubba Wallace, before his Kansas win, hadn't improved a lot in that 23 car. Kurt Busch went out and got a win early in the season, yet Bubba Wallace was struggling to consistently put together results. Since that contract, Bubba Wallace has done pretty well for himself. He has an average finish of 10th, I believe, in the last 6 to 10 races. Finally, Bubba Wallace is living up to the hype of having 2 documentaries, having a boatload of Fortune 500 sponsors, and obviously all the talk from mainstream America, all the publicity that he has gotten in the past 2 years. 2311 Racing's franchise driver now has some potential. He could finally make that leap and make the playoffs next season, and he will be in that staple 23 car for 2023 and beyond. So where does the question lie? Obviously, that is car number 45. Kurt Busch is in a situation where he hasn't returned yet, had that awful concussion at Pocono, and it is one that could potentially change the entire trajectory of his career. He might finally sit back and say, this isn't worth the risk. This isn't worth, getting in another wreck, especially with these next generation cars becoming more dangerous. The drivers can feel the impacts a lot more. So Kurt Busch might just say, screw it, I'm done, and he might instead go into a safer path, which is the route on television, because NASCAR and Fox, they do not have a color commentator to bridge the gap between Mike Joy and Clint Boyer. And if you think about it, next year is an extremely important year for Fox, because this is going to be the year that people are going to look at when signing the new TV deal. If they have one more bad year like they did in 2022, they could be overlooked in favor of NBC or possibly even ESPN and CBS. So let's say we get to that point where Kurt Busch decides, I'm content with my career. I don't want to risk it all on the racetrack again. I'm going to call it a career, a successful one at that. Theoretically, that would allow Tyler Reddick to join the team 1 year early. However, there are 2 factors that could impact whether Tyler Reddick makes this move, in addition to 2311 Racing and Toyota buying out the option from Richard Childress Racing. Number 1 is the fact that John Hunter Nemechek does not have a home for 2023. He is in fact under contract with Toyota exclusively, not with Kyle Busch Motorsports Toyota. And now you look at Kyle Busch Motorsports, in all likelihood, with Kyle Busch going to RCR, they are going to make the switch to Chevrolet. So that means the Ford truck is not going to be an option. And with John Hunter Nemechek performing well, Toyota could finally say, screw it, let's put him on the Cup Series program. This would be especially big for Toyota, as they lost Kyle Busch and they want to have a bit of momentum, and adding John Hunter Nemechek to the team as well as Tyler Reddick in the future, it's going to be massive for them, and thinking that, Toyota is not on the down low. They are going to be strong for years to come. But let's say that doesn't happen. John Hunter Nemechek goes somewhere else. There's another problem in terms of Tyler Reddick joining that team, and it is 100% sponsorship. The main reason I say that is because of the potential move that is going to happen at Joe Gibbs Racing as a response to Kyle Busch leaving the organization after 15 years to join Richard Childress Racing. In all likelihood, Kyle Busch's successor is going to be Xfinity superstar Ty Gibbs. Now, originally, this was not going to be the plan, because despite winning an incredible amount of races, Joe Gibbs wanted Ty to have one more season in Xfinity for him to learn lessons on maturity and being smart behind the wheel. However, things changed when Ty Gibbs was thrown into the fire in terms of the NASCAR Cup Series when Kurt Busch had his concussion, and he has done a damn good job in relief. Consider the fact that Ty Gibbs, before the race at Pocono, he had no experience with the next generation car. And when you consider that, when you consider the stats, Ty Gibbs has done a damn job, keeping the car clean, putting it inside the top 20 consistently. And I not only look at that as a reason why Ty Gibbs is deserving of this ride, but also Ty Gibbs understands and fits the modern NASCAR landscape better than any guy, than a person like Kyle Busch that demands a hefty contract. Look, Ty Gibbs is going to take the lower salary because he knows that this is a family business. He knows that it's got to keep going. He knows that he doesn't need a Fortune 500 company to fund his salary, though he will still have a strong amount of sponsorship should he move up to the NASCAR Cup Series, as he is likely going to have Interstate Batteries, Cub Cadet, and Sport Clips continuing their good relationship with Gibbs, as well as Monster Energy, which is his primary sponsor in the NASCAR Xfinity Series. And this right here is the main reason as to why the 45 car right now seems a bit in limbo for Tyler Reddick. Could Monster Energy come out and sponsor 2 NASCAR Cup Series teams? Quite possibly. They sponsored Ty Gibbs and Riley Herbst in Xfinity, so much to the extent that Josh Berry was absolutely angry, fuming to see the Monster Energy cars at the Indy Road Course. Still, with Monster Energy, they might not be ready for this leap to sponsor 2 NASCAR Cup Series teams, and plus it would be an outright disaster because you know they're probably going to run the same exact livery for Ty Gibbs and Kurt Busch. My goodness, the spotters are going to have a headache trying to spot for those cars. So if they don't sponsor the 45, which honestly I think for the greater good, I think it's better for them to put all their eggs in one basket with Ty Gibbs. If that happens, hopefully that allows for a company like Moneyline that decided, we're going to invest a lot more into NASCAR. In fact, they left Team Penske last year in favor of 2311 Racing because there were more opportunities for sponsorship. Maybe they can be the company that steps up and sponsors the 45 for Tyler Reddick or John Hunter Nemechek, whatever plays out with car number 45 in a situation where Kurt Busch retires. As for Joe Gibbs Racing, though, even if they go through the modern NASCAR sponsorship model, they will still have big money from FedEx, DeWalt, and likely Bass Pro Shops now that Martin Truex Jr. is officially coming back for the 2023 NASCAR Cup Series season. Honestly, there was no other option for Martin Truex Jr. besides potentially retirement, and obviously the move that would have allowed his career to come full circle, which would have been joining Junior Motorsports and helping Dale Earnhardt Jr. build up his Cup Series program. I still think strongly that Martin Truex Jr. will not end his Cup Series career at Joe Gibbs Racing, but instead Junior Motorsports. However, it will not be in the 2023 NASCAR Cup Series season. Martin Truex Jr. and Joe Gibbs Racing signed a 1-year deal, so he is going to be back. The 2017 champion is going to hope to make the playoffs next season, at least do better than he has this season. Even though, if we're honest, he should be in the NASCAR postseason. He's been one of the better drivers, but winning is absolutely everything, and Martin Truex Jr. did not win at all in 2022. Let's talk about Stewart-Haas Racing because it seemed like they were the favorites to land Kyle Busch back in July. Gene Haas even decided to go to Pocono, a rare appearance in NASCAR, to try to scout Kurt Busch to come and join his race team. This led to a lot of industry chatter that KFB was going to indeed replace the third-year driver that has been struggling in the NASCAR Cup Series, and that is Cole Custer in car number 41. However, that was dismissed when SHR's chief competition director Greg Zipadelli reiterated that the current plan was to have Custer return, and now it looks like with a majority of the pieces being moved, Cole Custer is indeed going to return for a 4th season in car number 41. However, there was still a bit of uncertainty with Stewart-Haas Racing, and that relied with the number 10 car. Eric Amarola knows that his children are getting older, and the longer he continues the race, the more time he's going to miss with them, watching them growing up, going to middle school, going to high school, moving out, things like that. And with all the money from the focus on the Smithfield, Amarola can officially retire as a competitive stock car driver. In fact, he announced his retirement in January. This was going to be the final ride, the swan song to Eric Amarola's career that produced 3 wins and a couple playoff appearances. However, would he follow through with this? Would he follow through even with all that money from the focus on the Smithfield? In this situation, Eric Amarola decided to cash in, and he will return not just for 2023 but also the 2024 season. Look, I know this is going to sound brutal, and Eric Amarola seems like a decent guy, a decent driver, but in the definition, when you look at the definition of selling out, Eric Amarola sold out in this situation. He was originally going to retire, spend some more time with family, but instead he decided to scrap that plan because of all the Smithfield money. Sure, he backed that up by stating that he found more work-life balance, but the fact that he opened up this number 10 car, the potential for, other people to join this seat, and then he decides to take it back, it just doesn't seem like the proper move to do. Although, to an extent, I do understand maybe why Eric Amarola decided to do this. Number one, to be a team player at Stewart-Haas Racing, because Kevin Harvick is likely out the door after next season. And plus, you have to look at a lot of things that have increased costs. Inflation, Russia invading Ukraine, raising gas prices. Eric Amarola in this situation decided, I'm going to run 2 more seasons. This is insured money, not only for the race team, to keep them afloat, but also myself, that this can help me build a steady cushion towards retirement and never have to worry about money again, even though he probably has a decent amount already in his bank account. So with that, Childress Racing is officially locked in for the 2023 NASCAR Cup Series season. One driver that won't be racing for Childress Racing that honestly made a lot of sense was Ryan Blaney. Honestly, had Eric Amarola retired, I think Childress Racing would have seriously made a pursuit for YRB because number one, he seems to fit the mold at Childress Racing. A veteran driver, one that has a bit of experience and is also pretty consistent as a young driver, but also the fact that Menards potentially could have funded Kyle Busch's salary, leading to a situation where they decide to put Kyle Busch in the 12 and Ryan Blaney naturally goes to the 10 car for the 2023 season. Instead, Roger Penske is sticking to the driver he's groomed for the past decade. Look, Ryan Blaney hasn't had the greatest Cup career when you're comparing him to Chase Elliott. I think he's a bit overrated in that sense. By now, I think he should be a top driver in this series. But to his credit, he and Jonathan Hassler, they have been a rock this season for Team Penske. They obviously made the playoffs, as you can really depend on that 12 team to get a decent finish when Ford as a whole has been down bad this season compared to Chevrolet and Toyota. Shell Pennzoil has also chosen to commit to the 22 car and Kyle Busch's rival Joey Logano until the 2027 season. And honestly, it's good to see a company that struggled in NASCAR's rise to popularity, one that did not get that boom, finally see results, finally see their loyalty be rewarded. They've won a Daytona 500, they've won a NASCAR championship, and they've had some statement inaugural victories at Bristol Dirt, the Clash, and obviously Gateway. Much like how they performed at the New York Stock Exchange this year, Shell plc will continue their success with Penske, and perhaps they will continue to win even more races with Joey Logano, especially since Joey Logano has officially been locked down to a multi-year contract extension. Not much of the deal was unveiled, but Joey Logano is pretty much going to run at least 2 to 3 more seasons in the 22, and this is a good move for Team Penske. You know, he is their driver, he is their franchise face right now because he not only wins consistently in the NASCAR Cup Series and is consistently a championship contender, although he could be doing a tad bit better considering his age, but also the fact that he has a strong personality on the track. You know, he is like the modern day Ryan Newman. He's not afraid to throw blocks, he's not afraid to race you even if he's about ready to go a lap down. Joey Logano also has a lot of experience, and paired with Paul Wolfe, these two are going to be a championship threat for years to come, I will tell you that. So what about Hendrick Motorsports? Well, they decided to pass on the opportunity of having Kyle Busch return home to race the number 5, much like the St. Louis Cardinals, as they allowed their number 5 Albert Pujols to come home and chase 700 home runs. They passed on this, and rightfully so, because when you look at Hendrick Motorsports in the long term, they are absolutely stacked. Franchise face at the moment, Chase Elliott was signed this February to a 7-year contract back in February to keep driving car number 9. And this was a move in February that originally aged like milk because he was getting run over by Kyle Larson and he had the least amount of wins on the team since the beginning of 2021. However, 4 wins, a regular season championship, and yet another run-in with Kyle Larson later, he's back to being the marquee young driver in the field and the top of the food chain for Hendrick Motorsports. Though there honestly was a tad bit of worry on the sponsorship side when you look at Napa, as they went well into July without a confirmed deal for the 2023 season. This is a company that has historically sponsored 26 races regularly, which is confirmed to be continuing for the next couple of years. Car number 9 will be blue and yellow for the long term. In other sponsorship news, secondary sponsor UniFirst also extended through 2028, with the most intriguing part of this deal being the fact that they are going to increase their races from 3 races to 5 beginning in 2024. And what that means is one of the current 2-race sponsors will be gone after next season for Chase Elliott. Honestly, if I had to guess, it is either going to be Lumar, which honestly makes more sense on the 24, or Kelley Blue Book, as they might move over to Kyle Larson considering that they were on his car for Watkins Glen. And that wasn't all the moves for Hendrick Motorsports, as William Byron, we all know he's an iDriver. He got his start on iRacing, makes his money on Google, and will now be winning championships in the new NASCAR Metaverse League for Hendrick Motorsports. Extending his stay with the team as Idols drove for until the 2027 NASCAR Cup Series season. Now, a lot of people are going to say it's a bit of a bold move. William Byron has 4 wins in 5 seasons as I'm recording this. He's done a decent job, climbing the ladder, really maturing, but still, you look at his 2022 season and how he doesn't have a lot of top 10 finishes. There's still a lot of growth for William Byron, so maybe Hendrick Motorsports jumped the gun a little bit, but obviously he is a driver that is incredibly talented. Liberty University also brings in a ton of sponsorships, so in that sense, William Byron to the 24 in the long run makes sense, as he will be in the 24 car. All the talk is extinguished until potentially Jeff Gordon's son, Leo Gordon, decides to make a run at the NASCAR Cup Series if he chooses to pursue racing like his father. But even if he doesn't decide to pursue a NASCAR Cup Series career, you're still going to have Chase Elliott at Hendrick Motorsports, you're still going to have William Byron, but you're also going to have Kyle Larson, the defending champion who just signed an extension to race for the team until 2026. HendrickCars.com will continue to sponsor their 35 races, with Valvoline picking up the other 3. And I'll tell you right here, this is a massive pickup for Hendrick Motorsports. They have made a statement. They have their drivers of the future, which means that there's going to be many more wins and dust-ups between Kyle Larson and Chase Elliott in the future. So what about the breakout team of the year? And that is obviously Trackhouse. This organization they bought, Chip Ganassi Racing, Mr. Worldwide. He's plotting that worldwide domination. And obviously, the major move they decided to make was to re-sign Daniel Suarez. This is a driver that has had a rough go about. They talked about it in the Drive to Survive series. He was crying himself to sleep, wondering if he would make it in the NASCAR Cup Series. He had to walk to Walmart, he'd buy Cocoa Crisp and just eat that every single day because he didn't have a lot of money. And now you can see that at the age of 30, it's starting to pay off. He's a NASCAR Cup Series winner. He's in the midst of a playoff run. So obviously, it is a smart move for Trackhouse to lock down car number 99. Daniel Suarez is going to be part of the house and their vision for years to come, which is incredibly exciting. Meanwhile, another new team, Colleague Racing, they were originally in the plot to get Kyle Busch, as Matt Colleague, he has an estimated net worth of $100 million. And this is thanks to his Leaf home brand that owns most notably the Leaf Filter Gutter Protection Service that is featured on Justin Haley's Cup car. This is an organization that wants to become a powerhouse in Cup like they have in Xfinity. They have the ambition and they have the people in place. How do you speed that process up? Bringing in a full-time driver for car number 16 to complement Justin Haley. Originally, the talks were that it was going to be Kyle Busch, but that has fallen through. Instead, it appears that there is going to be a major announcement on October 5th as to who is going to drive car number 16 in the 2023 season. Now, who do I think is going to do it? I am willing to bet that it is going to be Daniel Hemrick. He is going to be the driver that is going to drive car number 16. Now, obviously, am I a fan of this? Not exactly. Yeah, Daniel Hemrick's consistent. He can build a team, but I don't really know if he's going to be the guy that is necessarily going to win you races and win you championships. And here's where everyone's going to bring up the 2021 championship, as Daniel Hemrick is going to forever be the most puzzling driver. One career win. He has won one race in his entire NASCAR career, but he has one championship. Or perhaps they could go after a guy like Ty Dillon, who will be leaving Petty GMS Motorsports at season's end, doing what he was expected to do, honestly, and that was to help build up this first-year team into one that is somewhat competitive for NASCAR Cup Series standards. His replacement in this ride will be the wall-climbing, beer shotgunning, sage carom spinning son of a gun, Noah Gragson. Has he been solid in his NASCAR Cup Series starts for Colleague this year? Not exactly. However, he has matured a lot in NASCAR's Saturday show by already adding more top 10s and more wins to his resume. Plus, he makes a lot of economic sense. Black Rifle Coffee sponsors him in Xfinity. Allegiant Airlines is a Las Vegas company, so they'll be able to use the hometown feel in their NASCAR marketing since Gragson is in fact from the Sin City. This move solidified Petty GMS for 2023, going alongside the other announcement that Eric Jones has been locked up long-term along with Dave Ellens. And obviously this was a smart move, as Eric Jones and Dave Ellens, they went out and won the Southern 500 for the second time. The 43 car returned to victory lane in a big way. And now Petty GMS Motorsports, they have some traction as an organization, believe it or not. And this is because, they have a franchise face now. That Jones boy is a talent that got away from Toyota. And now he is here to help the 43 car become relevant again, and based on his performance this season, he is close to really breaking through. Potentially next season, he could be a championship contender. Finally, we got the driver nicknamed Ricky Stenhouse Jr., or otherwise known as Ricky Stenhouse Jr., returning to JTG Doherty Racing. As much as this organization seems to be in limbo when it comes to their future, this combination has gotten the 47 team better. Ricky Stenhouse Jr. and Brian Patty, they have brought what they learned from Rouse to the table, and they have done a phenomenal job. They obviously had that top 10 streak in the spring. They looked really good at Kansas before he slapped the wall, got back in the pack, and didn't get the finish he deserved. Though I think with time, you continue to build, and potentially with a new owner bringing in some fresh ideas, Ricky Stenhouse Jr., he could have an upswing, especially with the next generation car, this brand new era for the NASCAR Cup Series. So here we go, guys. It's time to make the predictions. What do I think is going to happen for the remainder of silly season now that the main domino has dropped? Kyle Busch going to Richard Childress Racing for the long-term future. So the first car that comes up is obviously the Kaulig number 16, and I'm sticking with my gut. It is going to be Daniel Hemric that is going to drive that number 16 car full-time for the championship in 2023 alongside Justin Haley. But obviously the next major domino to come about in NASCAR Silly season is going to be Ty Gibbs joining car number 18. There's a lot of debate as to what the number is going to be. I think they're going to put Ty Gibbs in the number 18. You got to think about it. Car number 18 is a staple number for Joe Gibbs Racing. Maybe in the future they decide to switch to the 54 whenever MTJ retires, but for now, the number 18 car, it is going to stay here for the long haul, even with Kyle Busch not driving this entry next season. And as for the final move, it is going to happen, guys. Tyler Reddick is going to remain at Richard Childress Racing, but not only will he be an open car, car number 33 will not be a charter team, but it will also be a part-time ride. The races he's going to do next season is largely going to depend on the sponsors that do not want to sponsor Kyle Busch and prefer to stick with Tyler Reddick in his transition from Richard Childress Racing to 2311. So obviously Tyler Reddick is not going to have a fun time. This is going to be a massive lesson from Richard Childress Racing to a lot of the young drivers and a lot of the people in the NASCAR Cup Series garage. You don't mess with Richard Childress Racing, and you certainly don't double cross him and sign a deal behind his back 1.5 years before the option that he picked up was obviously set to expire. Meanwhile, I think Kurt Busch is going to stick it out. He is going to do one last season. He is going to try to do the best he can. Maybe he wins a race. Hopefully he wins a race. Hopefully he makes the playoffs and ends on a competitive note, because it would surely suck to see him age like Prairie Farms milk, especially as he was fine wine up until this unfortunate concussion that was largely out of his control. So I'd say the big winners in NASCAR Silly season, obviously Hendrick Motorsports with locking down their core, Richard Childress Racing with getting Kyle Busch, and then obviously Kyle Busch because now he has a path set out for the remainder of his career. As for neutral, I'm saying Joe Gibbs because obviously they lost Kyle Busch. That's a huge blow, but Ty Gibbs, he could be that driver in the future to really soar in the long run. And then the losers, obviously Tyler Reddick because he's not going to be running for a NASCAR Cup Series championship next season. And then the biggest loser of them all is perhaps NASCAR on Fox. Now, NASCAR Twitter, they obviously see NASCAR on Fox as a laughingstock as it is. But once again, they're going to lose out on getting Kevin Harvick and or Kurt Busch to join their team. Meanwhile, guess what, guys? We get another year of Mike Joy and Clint Boyer being polar opposites, and Fox having to mitigate that by getting a booth carousel, by having different people every single week, and therefore we get some more awesome moments like this.
These late restarts do. Still on his outside.
So close. Just grabbing all the throttle they can to get the best run off.
So anyways, this is Nathan for NRF Productions, signing out, and just remember, guys and gals, life's a beach and then you drive.